Hey, Trinity Baptist family, this is Pastor Matt Crawford. Many of you have heard recently of the tragic and horrific story connected to the report released by the Sexual Abuse Task Force in the Southern Baptist Convention. It has hit basically every major news media outlet. It's hit local news here in Memphis. And I want you to hear directly from me on this issue, understand our church's response to it, and how I understand it. Please feel free to share this video. It's not necessarily just for our church. It's okay for you to share it. I and many friends of mine, many within the Southern Baptist Convention, have been tracking this issue in the Southern Baptist Convention literally for years. This is not a new thing. The release of this report, although there is new information in it, by and large, it is not a new issue. It is not something that is a surprise to us as a whole. We have known that there was an issue, and that's actually part of why there's been such an effort to create this task force to fully investigate and report on what has happened. Personally, I actually used to work part-time while I was pastoring, part-time as a consultant for the executive committee that's mentioned in the report. I was not actually on their official staff. I was not interviewed as part of any of the investigation. I worked as a consultant for them, basically promoting the cooperative program to young pastors. The cooperative program is that funding program by which 47,000 Southern Baptist churches can give and support our missionaries, our seminaries, our disaster relief, and many more ministries. It was a joy for me actually to do that because I believe in the cooperative program. It's something I want us to engage in more as a church over time to increase the percentage of giving that we send there. But I did that role for a couple of years. It's possible that I could even consult with them in the future on that. I know, partly because of my work at the executive committee and partly just in having served as trustee in different organizations and on different committees, I know many of the people that are mentioned in the Sexual Abuse Task Force report, including some who've been shown to have acted wrongly, but also I know quite a few of those who have courageously fought to bring the truth to light. In addition, through social media, through showing up at conventions, national conventions, state conventions, and associational meetings, I've been there and engaged in part of this struggle as well. Not in any kind of way in the forefront, but in terms of voting and speaking to it on social media. Just last year, our church, Trinity Baptist, sent 4 registered messengers to the Southern Baptist Convention annual meeting in Nashville. Me, my wife, Pastor Jerson, and Todd Payne went. That gathering was the largest Southern Baptist Convention annual meeting since 1995. There were 15,726 registered messengers, plus thousands of guests and media. At that meeting, the messengers voted to put this task force together and eventually issue the report that you're hearing the news about. Now, you may have heard that much in this report is about what's called the Southern Baptist Convention Executive Committee, and you may have no idea who the Executive Committee are. The Executive Committee is an organization, probably 30 people in terms of staffing that work at that organization, but then they are also supervised by a group of trustees that are elected by the Southern Baptist Convention. I've served as a trustee for Lifeway Christian Resources in the past. I have quite a few friends who serve as trustees of the Executive Committee. Those aren't paid employees. Those are pastors and lay leaders in the Southern Baptist Convention who hold the Executive Committee accountable. And part of the reason we are able to, in this day, to bring forward this report is because work has been done to put the right kind of trustees on the Executive Committee to force them to submit to this to this open investigation. Even the pastor that I served with in Tallahassee is one of those recent members of the Executive Committee. Excuse me. He's a recent addition to that group, and I have other friends on that group. What the Executive Committee does is they basically organize and lead the Southern Baptist Convention the rest of the year when we're not in an annual meeting. There's only really 2 days of the year, sorry, It's only 2 days of the year where the Southern Baptist Convention is formally gathered, and that's at the annual meeting. The rest of the year, there has to be an organization that runs things, that receives monies, that distributes them to the seminaries and mission boards and other entities. That's what the executive committee does. They're really there to promote the work of our missionaries and our seminaries, and to be sort of a cheerleader for those agencies and a clearinghouse for monies to be sent on. The staff, let me be really clear, the staff that you may have heard mentioned in this sexual abuse task force report, the staff that participated in covering things up or failing to act as they should in light of sexual abuse allegations, they're no longer there. They've either resigned or retired or basically been pressured out. The staff who remain at the executive committee currently are faithfully cooperating with the investigation. In fact, the report from Guidepost Solutions specifically mentions that and thanks them for their participation in it. I want you to understand that for years, many Southern Baptist pastors and others have known that there were stories like the ones featured in the Sexual Abuse Task Force report. And there's been a grassroots movement among rank and file Southern Baptists to purge our convention of evil. You've seen that other denominations, other church groups in America have dealt with similar tragic and horrifying stories. But it is our job within our convention to stand up to this evil, to drag it into the light, to expose abusers, and also to expose those who have not done what they could to prevent abuse, or to let churches know about abusers so that they don't keep hiring them. The report, the Sexual Abuse Task Force report, is the result of those messengers, especially last year, but it's been a years-long effort, but especially last year, 15,000 messengers showed up and overwhelmingly voted to force the executive committee to have a transparent investigation. Leadership at the executive committee had tried to do their own, basically they wanted to hire an outside group to do an investigation, but they wanted to supervise the investigation and get to decide how much of it was made public. That's not a real investigation. That doesn't accomplish what it needs to. So the messengers from the floor voted and forced the issue, and that is why you've had an independent outside investigation with a fully published report. That has brought these things to light. That is the first step in healing. And I want to say that to you just so you understand that the messengers have brought this forward. It is not something that we as a convention are wanting to hide. We as a convention in the most there's a powerful voice in the SBC. The most powerful voice is the messengers, and none of the entities can refuse to follow the messengers as they work through our trustee process and motions from the floor. So there is the will and the motivation and even already the momentum to fix this and to bring healing. That's why you see this report. In John 3:19 through 21, Jesus says, "This is the judgment. The light has come into the world, and people love darkness rather than the light because their deeds were evil. For everyone who does evil hates the light and avoids it, so his deeds may not be exposed. But anyone who lives by the truth comes to the light so that his works may be shown to be accomplished by God." We want to bring these things to the light. Hiding them in the darkness makes things so much worse. What is interesting about this within the SBC is that our church, our denominational government, our government of our convention is bottom up, not top down. So other denominations, Catholic, Methodist, Presbyterian, they are top down, meaning they have top authority that if a pastor's doing something inappropriate, they can have that pastor fired and replaced with someone else. In the Southern Baptist Convention, we believe, and this is a Baptist distinctive belief, we believe in local church autonomy, that each individual church is led by Jesus. He is the head of his church, but that church cannot be told by any other church or any outside group what to do, what pastors to hire or other staff, how much to pay them, whether to fire them, any of those things. And we believe that's actually biblical and appropriate for many reasons. Local church autonomy is a long-held Baptist distinctive. However, it also means that the Southern Baptist Convention does not have authority to tell us or any other church what to do, including the Southern Baptist Convention cannot tell a church to fire a pastor who has abused or who has not dealt with abuse in his church appropriately. The Southern Baptist Convention can kick out a church, meaning they're no longer part of the SBC, if they're harboring abusers. And actually we've done that as a convention. And we've recently strengthened our bylaws for doing so, for making clear that we will not allow churches to be part of our convention that are soft on abuse or that harbor abusers. But this report that just came out revealed that for many years, leaders in the executive committee heard credible stories about abuse in churches, and their number one response was this: we've got to protect against liability, especially liability for the denomination itself, rather than bring justice and care for survivors. That their number one goal was to protect liability, and that was wrong. It dishonored the name of Christ, and it did the opposite, actually, of protecting the reputation of churches and the denomination. When you cover up sin, when you don't deal with these things as you should and being transparent, it actually makes it worse. And now you see the result of that kind of foolish and I believe wicked behavior. Years ago, I attended a conference that the ERLC, the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention, put on in Dallas, Texas, called the Caring Well Conference. And it was, again, in response to these things. Like I said, this has been going on for years. It was very helpful to me to understand these things and how we as a church, me as a pastor going forward, I was serving in a different church at the time, but how we can deal with these things faithfully. I read a book as part of our church's walking through that process, a book entitled Becoming a Church That Cares Well for the Abused. And basically it's trying to prevent abuse in your church and then respond if you are told about abuse, whether that abuse happens in your church or it's just someone in your church or community who's been abused by someone, maybe not associated with your church at all. How do you help that person? How do you report it and respond to it? Our church staff, our ministerial staff, we go through book studies for our own growth as Christians, but also for our leadership in ministry. And that's actually going to be the next book we're going to go through. I've had it on my list of books that I wanted us to go through, and especially in light of all this, it's time to do it now. It's at the top of my list, and it'll be the next book that we go through as a ministerial staff. I do want to tell you and thank you for providing the resources for us to attend the Southern Baptist Convention and engage in these issues. Christy and I will be going in just a few weeks. It's in Anaheim, California this year. Next year, it will be in New Orleans. Pretty easy drive from Memphis, and I would love to take a full slate of messengers if possible. I think we can take around 10 messengers total, and those can be lay people or ministers on staff. At Trinity, I talked to you recently about bringing in a children's ministry consultant to make sure that we're doing everything we can to avoid a situation of abuse. We want accountability. We want transparency. We want to protect children here on campus, whether that's Mother's Day out, Sunday school, VBS, you name it. We want to be a safe environment for kids. Lisa, Babette, and myself are in ongoing discussions about the recommendations that our children's ministry consultant had, and we'll be bringing those to you regarding any changes that we need to make, whether that's in our facilities or policies, procedures that need to be approved by the church or anything like that. Let me just give you some quick action steps. What can we do? Number one, lament and pray. We have to pray, especially for survivors. Pray that God will bring healing to their lives and his peace to their hearts. That's a work that I believe only he can do. Pray for repentance in the hearts of those who have committed these horrible actions, whether abusing others or not bringing it forward as it should or covering it up. Pray for transparency in our churches and our denominational entities. Pray for God to prevent these horrible actions from happening in any church, Southern Baptist or otherwise. Number two, if you see something, say something. If you see a person here on campus acting in a way that is inappropriate towards a child or towards anyone else, say something, speak up. If someone who has been abused comes to you, support them. And if they're a minor, contact the police. I've had to do this before. I pastored a church in Florida. There was a minor who came to me and told me about a situation that was going on with an adult, and I reported and walked through that situation with the police, and they had to act. I have to legally report Trinity employees. We are not trained or authorized to conduct investigations, and we are legally obligated to contact authorities and will do so We want to prevent abuse, and we want to care well for those who have been abused, wherever that abuse may have occurred. Number three, as I said, we're implementing policies and procedures to continue to protect children here. Help us in that. Be willing to make necessary changes as we bring them up. For years as a church, we've done background checks on anyone who works with children or youth. We will continue that. We've already been in the process of looking at areas where we can tighten up things. For example, check-in and check-out procedures. We've already been working on that, putting those into place. Lisa Buckner, Frank Davison, and Debbie, Allen, and others, and Babette have worked hard on this. We're going to continue to be diligent in that. Number four, I would tell you, be cautious with your own children. And let me just give you an example. I'd encourage you to not send young children to the restroom by themselves, out in public, or even here at church. Our doors are open to anyone who wants to attend, and that is how it should be. But that also means that we cannot constantly control who's in the restroom. And although we have a great and diligent security team, they cannot watch every single part of the building at all times. I would encourage you to be cautious in that area. And then number five, let's continue to engage our community with love and the gospel. Our country needs revival. You know, you saw yesterday the report of another school shooting and the tragic deaths that happened there. There's violence in schools. There's abuse in many places. Evil is running rampant. The devil is, Scripture says, he's like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. But we also know that greater is he who is in us than he who is in the world. Jesus alone can change hearts. So as we share the gospel and people are saved, I think God uses their salvation to prevent people from going down a path where they may engage in violence or abuse. So we need the Lord to touch our city and our country and world. So let's be part of the change by speaking the gospel and seeing the Lord and the Holy Spirit himself change hearts. If you have any questions, please reach out to me by phone, email, or in person. I'm happy to answer more questions about this. And again, I will continue to be engaged in this at the denominational level. God bless you, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.